From the perspective of evolution, it is likely that survival normally involved periods of fasting. The situation we have today, with regular meals and a well-stocked fridge, is a historical anomaly. So it's not surprising that the body encounters difficulties when it doesn't fast and eats constantly. Our genetic heritage appears to be less adapted to this situation than it is to fasting.
So it seems that our body is better equipped to deal with lack of food than excess. So does fasting activate atavistic reflexes rooted in the body's memory? If that hypothesis is valid and the ability to fast is inherited from our evolution, it must be observable in the genetic code. The memory should be inscribed there. But who would be crazy enough to try and find what no one is looking for? Walter Longo is a young Italian researcher working in a laboratory at USC, the University of Southern California in Los Angeles.
I have my goal. It's not very far. I need my son.
His field is gerontology, the mysteries of aging. At 16, he emigrated to the United States in the hope of becoming a rock star. Now, he's an internationally renowned biologist.
Welcome to California. We're not far now from the countdown.
Like all gerontologists, Walter Longo has a goal: delaying chronic diseases that appear with age, such as Alzheimer's and cancer, and generally slowing down the effects of aging. Researchers have shown that reducing the food supply of an animal over a long period allows it to live a longer and healthier life. Longo is aware of that.
Oh, good.
One day, he decided to take a decisive step. Why not try the extreme form of caloric restriction, fasting? The idea seemed ludicrous.
Good job.
Especially in those sophisticated laboratories in California, but not to Longo. He had an intuition that fasting might protect the body against all sorts of toxins. He would test it with one of the most toxic of all, chemotherapy, the poison for destroying cancer. He took mice with cancer and separated them into two groups. One group was fed normally, the second group fasted for 48 hours.
So then I convinced a few graduate students that first thought it was a crazy idea because it's very counterintuitive. You think you starve something and it's going to become weaker, right? It's hard to, especially for somebody young, but even for somebody very experienced, our own colleagues, it's hard to imagine how you can starve something and that becomes stronger.
He then injected the mice with high doses of chemotherapy, doses 3 to 5 times higher than those allowed in humans, doses that would cause devastating side effects. Would the mice be able to deal with that treatment? Would there be a difference between those who fasted and the others? Longo was away when a colleague told him the results.
And she called me up and she said, "You won't believe the results. It looks like all the fasted mice are alive and all the mice on the normal diet are dead." And so, of course, I was very happy because it was more than I was expecting. And so I asked her to repeat it, and I asked the people here to repeat it, and both of them came back with exactly the same results.
This is a video showing the behavior of the two groups treated with temozolomide.
In these images, filmed by the laboratory, the differences between the two groups of mice are obvious. On the one side, those who fasted seemed perfectly healthy. They move normally, their hair is smooth, their tissues are not damaged, and their cognitive functions seem intact. Here on the right, are the mice who ate normally. In the end, only 35% survived. They're in bad shape, and they just lie prostrate in their cages. Detailed examinations showed that their heart and brain were also affected. The news was a bombshell. As soon as the study was published in a scientific journal, the press was talking about it. The results for the moment only concern mice. No matter. The journalists spread the word. Fasting protects from the side effects of chemotherapy. This is the Norris Hospital in Los Angeles, one of the largest anti-cancer institutions in the United States, where 200 therapeutic trials are conducted each year. Here they took the discovery very seriously. The hospital board decided to launch a clinical trial on patients without delay. Dr. Tanya Dorf is supervising it. The young oncologist is enthusiastic. The people fighting cancer in the front line know that they need new strategies.
I've always felt that it's so unfortunate that our tools for treating cancer are destructive. They attack anything that's growing quickly. They're very indiscriminate. And we're developing better targeted therapies, but I think it makes a lot of sense to try to protect the body and maximize the damage done to the cancer and minimize the harm done to the normal body.
Yeah, I think the muscles might get stiff.
But we should be cautious. Not many patients have been recruited yet. This patient has fasted for 24 hours. Others have done 48 hours. No longer for now. The first step is to prove that fasting is not dangerous for cancer patients. For this revolutionary approach goes against official recommendations, which prescribe the opposite: an increase in calories and protein before each chemotherapy session. The experiment needs to gradually expand to larger numbers of patients. There's no lack of money. Public and private funds are flowing in. In fact, fasting is not a substitute for medication. By reducing the side effects, it could even make it possible to increase the doses of chemotherapy. As a doctor at the hospital remarked to us, imagine, it's a treatment that's easy to implement and cheap.
This trial has an important proof of concept. If we can demonstrate that patients have less toxicity after they are fasted, this will transcend and potentially be applicable to many patients getting cancer therapy, not just one disease, but maybe the whole spectrum of cancer treatment.
Obviously, the clinical trials will take time, but when your life is in the balance, it's hard to accept these slow protocols. Nora Quinn is not waiting, even though she's anything but impulsive. This county judge from Los Angeles wanted to tell us her story, and at the same time, meet the scientist who has restored hope for her, as she says.
Dr. Longo, I'm Nora Quinn.
When she read an article in the Los Angeles Times describing the work of Longo, Nora Quinn made her decision. She had just been diagnosed with breast cancer.
So if I'd waited for them to go through the human trials process, it would have been 10 years later. I'd be dead from breast cancer. So since I had to start chemotherapy then, I couldn't wait. And I was very lucky. My oncologist was open to the idea. She didn't encourage me to do it, but she didn't say no. She said, if you want to fast, go ahead, do it. She goes, I don't think it'll make any difference, but go ahead and do it.
Nora Quinn had to complete 5 chemotherapy sessions. She was afraid of the side effects, especially the disturbance of her cognitive functions. Under the supervision of a doctor friend, she fasted 5 days before the first chemotherapy. She felt good and could continue working. For the next 2 sessions, her oncologist persuaded her not to fast. She reacted very badly to the chemotherapy. She felt so bad that she decided to fast before the last 2 chemo sessions. Again, she felt much better.
There's no question in my mind that I came out of the treatment with fewer side effects and less long-term fatigue and chemo brain than my friends who did not fast, who went through similar rounds of chemotherapy. There's no question in my mind.
Nora Quinn is not the only patient to have fasted spontaneously. Among the 30 people who've tried it, the Norris Hospital was able to take a sample group of 10, see their medical records, and obtain their analysis. Nora Quinn was part of that study. The results confirmed those observed in mice. The fasting made chemotherapy more bearable. Fatigue, weakness, nausea, and headaches were significantly reduced. But if fasting protects the potentially devastating effects of chemotherapy, how does it affect the chemo itself? Does it make it more effective or not? Before answering this crucial question, we need to first understand the mechanisms by which fasting protects healthy cells. Does fasting cause a change in gene expression? Longo selected cells from the liver, heart, and muscles. If we unravel the DNA strands, here are the genes. These genes are directing the work of the cell. Their expression is normal. After 2 days of fasting, Longo observed a radical change in the expression of the genes. Some were overexpressed, others underexpressed. The genes had modified the cell's functions, putting them in protection mode. It was a total transformation which happened very quickly, as if this ability came from an ancient genetic memory.
The normal cells, having learned all the lessons in those 3 billion years, enter a protective mode. They have to, because there is low glucose, low nutrients. They have to stand by and stay as protected as possible. And chemotherapy is one of the things they have to be protected against.
So the cells protect themselves as an atavistic reflex. Yvonne Mao, the penguin specialist, had put us on that track. But if fasting protects healthy cells, doesn't it also protect cancer cells? If so, Longo's whole thesis collapses. Let's compare a cancer cell with a normal cell. After 2 days of fasting, the genes of the cancer cell are expressed in the opposite way to those of the healthy cell. As the cancer cells have undergone genetic mutations, they've lost the evolutionary memory and the protection mechanisms do not occur.
The cancer cells hate this low glucose, low growth factor environment, and not only they do not become protected, they become more sensitive to chemotherapy. In fact, even in the absence of chemotherapy, they can die, or certainly their growth can be reduced. And so fasting can slow their growth even without chemotherapy.
Even without chemotherapy, we were told, for cancer cells, fasting is a nightmare.
I recently presented at one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, and I basically challenged the executive of the company to come up with a cocktail of drug, not just a single drug, but a cocktail of drug that will have more potent effects in general than fasting will have.
The question is, why would you want to deal with